Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Eat. I don't know why, but it feels like it's been so long since I recorded a podcast episode, which is obviously not the case. I don't remember when I recorded my last episode, but it feels like it was so long ago. Or maybe it just feels like a lot has happened between the last time I recorded and now. So, lots to catch up on in our next family dinner episode. I'll probably talk a little bit here in this episode as I introduce the episode. And then also, it'll be just a couple weeks until I do my Q2 Healthiest Self update and kind of share a little bit more about what's been going on there, what I've been struggling with, what I've been thriving with, because you know that it's a combination of both things. And so I'll be able to share more. But knowing that episode's looming, I'm kind of doing a little bit of a regroup of like, okay, like what areas have I been struggling with, or have I been kind of off my game with, and what areas do I feel like I have kind of a good groove with. And so that's partially a really powerful accountability tactic. Recording an episode so that I can share with you how things are going, and if certain things are not going, this is my opportunity to kind of get it together. But it is the perfect time of day. I I personally feel it is 6:05 in the morning. It is Monday morning, and I am feeling so ready for this week. I'm very excited for this week. I'm excited for this weather we're having today. It's going to be about 90 degrees. It was 90 degrees for most of the weekend. And truthfully, I will take 90 degrees any day of the week at any time over cold. I don't get me wrong, I love to bundle up, especially towards the end of the summer. I am the person that's like ready for pumpkin spice and like ready to be cozy and in sweaters and whatnot. Like that is something I will in fact be talking about come July, August. So just so you all are aware that you have to forgive me, preemptively forgive me for wishing away summer come the end of the summer, because I'm always that person that's like, I'm ready to go back to school. I'm ready for pumpkin. I'm ready for the cold. But right now, and it's so funny, I think I talked about this on a podcast episode. I don't remember. Maybe I did, but I don't remember. But the snowstorm we had in January, we got wrecked by snow. We actually got wrecked a couple times by snow in January, and we had that few weeks where it was like 0 degrees and just so cold. And of course, I'm talking to Tallow while we're outside. We're walking around outside, like trudging through the snow. And the problem was the snow fell. And then what had happened was, I think it like rained maybe on top of the snow. I forget exactly what happened, but it was snow, many inches of snow, and then like a sheet of ice on top. So Tally was just light enough to be able to walk across it without sinking in. I was not light enough to not sink in. And so you're doing one of those kind of like you're stepping on it, and then for like a second, you're you're stable on it, but then your foot push once you put your weight on it, your foot, so it's just dreadful. It hurts. Like if you're not wearing the proper footwear, it hurts because it's ice, you're stepping in your ankle, like, or I mean, even I'd be wearing my snow boots and it would still come up over my boots because the snow was so hot. I mean, and I remember thinking and telling Callie, just wait a couple months. A couple months, we're gonna have grass. We're not gonna have any snow. We're gonna be out here in our shorts and a t-shirt, like just. And of course, Callie, like, obviously, what does she know? She doesn't care. She's like, whatever. But I'm over here like, just give it a couple months. And here we are. It has been a couple months. And it's just amazing how time passes, because at the time, and truthfully, I remember so distinctly at the time feeling like it's only January. We have so much more to go for this. Like, we have so much more time in this type of weather, in this climate. And this was like the first year in a couple years that I didn't go to Florida with my dad. So then that also just made the winter feel extra long, but it's just so wild, right? Because now we're many many months past that. Time flies, obviously. And I remember thinking and telling, literally verbalizing to Tally. I don't know, does anyone else do that? Does anyone else talk to their dog? Well, I do. So here I am. I remember literally saying to her, just give it a couple months. This is all going to go away. It's got to go away. Like it will. Like it's not going to be here forever. So anyways, we're out of the woods here. All right. We're not getting any more snow. We are in 90 degrees now. I'm sure this 90 degrees won't stay. It kind of ebbs and flows through the end of May into June, but I will take it. I will never ever take it for granted ever again after the winter that we had, and I'm happy that it's here. So, a few things before we dive into today's podcast episode. I went to an event on Thursday night in New York City. I'm going to be talking more about this in family dinner and in my healthiest self update. But I went into New York City, which is about an hour and 20 minutes from me. So it's really not far. And I think, you know, the city is such a great opportunity for me to network, to connect, to go to events like this. And it's like you think, oh, an hour and 20 minutes, like that's not bad at all. And that is factual, that is true. But for anyone in my area, driving into the city is the intimidation factor, right? It's not so much like an hour and 20 minutes is the same distance to more or less to Philadelphia. It's the same distance more or less down the shore, right? To the Jersey Shore. So we've always said we're in like such a good location because we have such access to these major locations if we choose to go to them. But getting into New York City is just, to me, it's intimidating. Now some of you might be listening and maybe you commute to the city for work, maybe you used to commute to the city for work, maybe you go to the city often and it's no big deal. But few things here. I am not one to thrive in public transport. Do not ask me to use public transport. I am born and raised Hunterdon County, New Jersey, rural, no public transport in sight type of person. So I do not know how to navigate the subway, the train. I don't know any of that. Okay. Yes. If you could say to me, okay, just go to this train and get on this train and do not get off this train until you are in Penn Station or you are in your in your destination, I could maybe manage that. But I am too stressed out to worry about finding where I need to go. And everyone, seems to say, oh, it's so easy. It's so straightforward. Listen, I think there's a few things that intimidate me. It's finding where I should go and being so obviously unaware of where I should go that everyone knows that I don't know where I should go. It's like all these like routine New York City people who are like, they're booking it. They know exactly where they need to be and where they need to go. And I'm over here like, where am I supposed to go? Like, help. So I will not be someone who uses public transport, at least at this moment in time. Maybe if for whatever reason it ends up working out that I have to, then okay, fine. But secondly, I just like to have my car. Like, I feel like I've gotten to a point in my life where I just like that control and I like knowing I can get in my car and get out if I have to and when I want to and not have to wait for a train or wait for whatever. So that is just like, yes, I just would rather drive. So I drove in Thursday evening, not to say that days really matter to you here, but I drove in the afternoon Thursday evening. I had a client that I had to take. So I basically timed, I thought I had given myself plenty of time, but I parked on the side of the road in the middle of New York City just to take this call because I had just gotten in and just at the right time could take that client call. So while I was sitting on the side of the road, I took my client call. I was close to the parking garage, but it was valet. And I realized that on my way in, I bought valet, which truthfully, I don't need valet. Like I'd rather just park my car and be able to know where my car is, especially because oh my gosh, Emily, get to the episode. I like had all my stuff and I'm like, I like to go into the parking garage and take like a good like 5 minutes to like fix my makeup or get my things together and like mentally go over, okay, what are the things that I need to bring with me? Like business cards, cash, debit card, license, like all of these things in my little side purse that I have to then transport from my wallet into, do all these things. I can't be just rolling up and being like, okay, here's my car, please go park it. Like I'd much rather just not do that. But I realized I already paid for it. So I'm like, all right, well, I can't be that guy that's like sitting there and holding up the line and whatnot. Can you tell that I overthink things? I'm just wondering. We're about 9.5 minutes into this episode, and I think everything I've just shared with you is just me overthinking. Anyways, so I parked on the side of the road, and I took my call, and then I parked in the parking garage, and then I walked. I walked to the restaurant that I decided on. There were so many options, of course, and I found one that had a local burger with raw cheddar. So that was enough for me. I said, okay, this is where I'm going. I only had a certain window of time. So I walked about a mile to the restaurant. Love that. Like that's like my favorite part about the city is just how I can walk everywhere, and I love that. Like that's like I think one of the only reasons I would live in the city is for that. For that reason. I had myself a little bit of a dinner date. I sat at the bar. I had myself a non-alcoholic Negroni, which I don't really even like Negronis. I don't think I've ever had a real Negroni, but I went with it. And I think I've had this brand before though, so I think that's why I got it because I've had the brand before. And I had myself a burger. I made a friend at the bar. We just were kind of chit-chatting, and then I paid out and I walked back a mile. I was going to stop at Whole Foods because one, I desperately needed Band-Aids. My feet were not happy, especially because, and I knew this was going to happen. I wore new shoes and I knew, and they were no support little ballet flats. So you know what happens when you're wearing ballet flats and walking around the city. I needed to stop, and so I was gonna stop at Whole Foods, but it was kind of too far off of my path, so I ended up passing the CVS right next door to the event. But anyways, now I'm getting too far into this, and that's not the point of this episode. What I wanted to share about this event was, which I'll share more about it once in future episodes. I went to the event at Parsley Health in New York City, and that is like their headquarters. So they have one in Los Angeles, and then their main headquarters is in New York City, I'm pretty sure. Parsley Health was founded by Dr. Robin Berzin. Dr. Robin Berzin wrote the book State Change, which is now known as The Prescription for Happiness. And basically, I was sent this book before it was released back in 2020. It was the end of 2020 into 2021. I was sent a DM, asked if I would be interested in reading this pre-released book. I said absolutely. I didn't know I didn't know who this email was from. It was like a publishing company. I just kind of agreed to it. And then, or no, maybe they DM'd me. I forget. I forget. They emailed me or DM'd me. I forget. They sent me the copy of the book. I took it with me to Florida because it was right around the time I was going to Florida, and I devoured the book. I think every page I read, I remember thinking, this book is amazing. I love this book. I love this book. I love this book. Moving forward, I've recommended this book. I've referenced this book. This was a book I used in my work as a therapist. We had a clinician book club, and I had all the clinicians read the book with me as like a group, group book club because I just love it and I know how valuable it is. So, obsessed with this book, okay? I've read it several times. I have both copies, both the original copy, which I think is really cool because it's the like original copy that now no longer exists because it's a new title, and then it was retitled and re-released and all that. So I walk into Parsley Health and it's Parsley Health, right? Like her book is there, all of their logo and their all of their merch and whatnot. I'm like, this is so freaking cool. So I went to the bathroom, okay, and I did not really have to go to the bathroom. I just wanted to go to the bathroom because I wanted to kind of freshen up, and I didn't know anyone, and I was like, all right, let me just go to the bathroom. So I walked to the bathroom, and there she is, the author and the person that I've looked up to for so many years. She's in in the bathroom getting ready for whatever she was getting ready for because she wasn't a part of this event. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? So I go into the bathroom stall. And of course, I don't have to go to the bathroom now. I'm just standing in this stall. And I was like, okay, what do I do? So I was like, well, either I just go out there and wash my hands when I don't need to wash my hands because I didn't actually go to the bathroom, but I can't, I can't. I mean, I have been walking around New York City. I probably should wash my hands, but um, I don't want to go out there and not wash my hands, even though I haven't used the bathroom, but she doesn't know that, right? So overthinking, hi, that's me. Or I go out there and I say hi. Like, why not? Like, I would be so bummed if I decided not to say hello and missed out on this probably once in a lifetime opportunity. So I walk out there, I like turn on the faucet, I start to wash my hands, and I look over, I'm like, hi, like she's like mid chatting, and what ended up happening was the person next to her, which I didn't even see, like I didn't even like I knew someone was there, but I didn't make acknowledge who that person was, ended up being the one of my girlfriends who invited me to the event, who we've never met in real life before. We've just been friends online. And I started talking to Dr. Berzin, just saying like how much I admire her and how much I love her book. And I said, I'd like, kind of like, I don't want to be, I'm sure like kind of I don't want to be that guy that's like, fangirling. I didn't say that, but you know what I mean? Like I just was kind of like, I just want to let you know I really admire you. And then Allie on the other side is like, Emily. And I was like so embarrassed, of course, at that point, because I'm like, oh my God, here I am fangirling over Dr. Robin Burson. Allie's here. She's like steaming her pants because she has to get ready for the event. And she's just been standing with Dr. Robin Burson. They're probably chatting. And I'm over here, yeah. So, and Allie was like, and I was like, Allie, hi. So that's my story. That is my starstruck in the moment, having to proclaim my admiration for this particular woman. Highly recommend you check her out. Parsley Health is the only functional health practice in the country, I think it is, that offers insurance nationwide. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Like, this is like a huge, huge development for them because of how inaccessible functional health is. So they are so cool and so great, and I'm so excited for their, continued mission in the functional health space. And Dr. Robin Burson, follow her if you're not following her, and get her book, read her book, because I'm going to do a lot of talking about her book today in today's podcast episode. So, in my defense, this does segue into today's episode. So, I'm sorry that I just taken 15 minutes of your time to go down that rabbit hole, but we are diving into today's episode. We're talking about mental health from a physical health lens. And this is something that I talk about so regularly. I've talked about it on the podcast before, but I haven't talked about it in a while. And May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I just want to provide some of my insights about this topic, what I'm seeing in my work. What I see is one of the most common, or some of the most common influences on our mental health from a physical health standpoint, the roadblocks I faced as a therapist, and some of the kind of emerging understandings around how physical health impacts our mental health. I think one of the hardest parts about this topic is it is very controversial to place the origins of mental health dysfunction within the realm of physical health. I I'll explain what I mean by that, but I want to really shed light on this, and I feel very confident and comfortable and competent to speak on this topic because of my years and years and years of learning and understanding and education and my background and all of that. And so I think it's really important that we're spreading this awareness and shedding light on this topic, because there's a lot that we can be doing on a daily basis from a physical health standpoint that has profound influence, undeniable influence on our mental health. And I want to talk a little bit more about what I see in labs that is then also influencing this. So thank you so much for being here. I welcome you back to the table, and let's eat. Welcome to Let's Eat. I'm your host, Emily, certified holistic health coach, functional nutrition expert, and self-proclaimed wellness enthusiast, here to meet you at the intersection of physical and mental health, the space within which we become well. This podcast is meant to explore all areas of mind and body wellness, designed to offer you the integrative knowledge, behavioral strategies, and mindset shifts necessary to uplevel your health and feel better today. We'll explore nutrition, sleep, movement, self-care and stress management, habits and routines, self-development, gut health, mental health, and more. I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome to the table. Let's eat. So that was probably the longest introduction that I've ever done on an episode. And I apologize, but also, you know what? This is my podcast, so we're just going to let things happen the way that they happen. And I felt that introduction was necessary. I felt that introduction was relevant to the topic. And this topic is something that is near and dear to my heart. It is truly the foundation upon which everything stands in my work. And it has been the focal point since I started in all capacities, whether it's the podcast, my business, my platforms. So this episode is so important, and like I said, I've covered this numerous times in a multitude of different ways over the course of the past many years of the podcast on other platforms. But it never hurts to revisit it and to re-explore it, especially for someone who maybe is new to the podcast, or maybe you need this reminder. Maybe you've listened to me explain this 100 times, and I'm hopeful that I'm able to provide some different angles and different kind of insights around it, especially when labs come into play, because I have not yet talked about this in labs. But I just feel it is so important. It's so not talked about, and the mental health field needs some serious revival. Honestly, I will say I mean, you know how I feel about that, about the physical health field too, right? Like our healthcare system across the board needs change. But you have to call into question, like, the why are the mental health statistics continuing to increase, and why are we seeing rising rates of depression and anxiety? Like, what is the reason for that? And yes, you could argue we're living in stressful times. You could argue technology. I think definitely between the two of them, those have greatest influence in terms of the world we live in today, what we deal with economically, politically, internationally, and then also technology being so embedded in the framework of our day to day and our lives. Yes, no doubt about that. But we also need to call into question, what are we eating? How are we sleeping? Are we moving our bodies, right? All of these factors that have direct impact on our physical health, and no one can argue that, but also have direct impact on our mental health. Direct impact. And we are not making that connection enough. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience as a therapist and what that was like for me to guide clients in that capacity. So I want to start by reading a few statistics and a few what's the word I'm looking for? Quotes or excerpts from the book Prescription for Happiness, Dr. Robin Berzin. Shout out, Dr. Robin Berzin. Would love to have you on the podcast if you're listening. You're probably not listening, but if anyone knows her or can connect me with her, please beg that she comes on the podcast. Tell her the bathroom girl wants her to come on the podcast. No, for real, that would be a dream guest of mine for sure. Anyways, hopefully she's not listening to me calling myself the bathroom girl. Okay, let's just move on. So I'm going to read a few excerpts from Dr. Robin Berzin's book, The Prescription for Happiness, to kind of sum up what exactly her book shares on when it comes to the state of mental health and the importance of taking care of ourselves physically in connection with our mental health, and just notable excerpts that I think will help to really flesh out this conversation. I, of course, want to then just share my insights, especially from a lab standpoint, but also just over the years, what I've learned, what I've seen, what I know. And then hopefully provide you with some food for thought to take away and to think on around your mental health and what you might be currently navigating. I want to be very clear before I get into this that I'm not trying to invalidate or make anyone feel as though their mental health is completely self-led. I think that there is a lot of trauma, and trauma is at the root of a lot of our mental health concerns and our mental health symptoms. I think we also can be more vulnerable to certain mental health issues just from a genetic standpoint. I think there's a lot of factors that influence our mental health, and I do not want to come across as though I'm suggesting that everything has to do with nutrition and lifestyle. However, even with pre-existing vulnerabilities, even with having history of trauma, there's a lot we can be doing to even just help our experience and to not aggravate it more, because we might be genetically predisposed to depression or anxiety, and that might be the case. However, what we're doing on a daily basis, if we know that about ourselves, can make a huge difference in our experience, so that we're able to self-manage our symptoms and feel at least, maybe if we're not 100% better, but we're still feeling better. That's our responsibility. That is our responsibility. So Dr. Robin Berzin centers her book around this idea that mental health is deeply physiologic and not just psychological. So, physiologic meaning it is in the body. And, what's so interesting is as I was reading this book, and I'm reading on the cover that it says Reader's Advanced Reader's Edition on sale January 18th, 2022. So, I guess I must have gotten this 2021 into 2022. I was thinking it was 2020 into 2021. So, I'm a year behind. But when I was reading this was also around the time that I started writing my book. And this was such an inspiration for me because her concepts in here were exactly what I was writing in my book. And by the way, I was writing a book a couple years ago, and that's obviously taken the back burner, the back seat, taking the trunk, if you will. I'm not focusing on it. And now, honestly, what I was writing 3 years ago in my book would not be what I'm writing about now, which is crazy if I were to go back and read it and just be like, oh my God, all the things I didn't know, or all, just it's crazy how much my brain has expanded around health and wellness. But anyways, so her book was so inspiring to me because of that, because I loved all the concepts and I aligned with all the concepts, but it was also so similar to what I was reading. So she basically says in this book, you have to change your body to change your mind and mood. And that's so true. Like there's so much that we can be doing physiologically to support the body, and that is going to then have a direct influence on our moods. So, before I get into statistics, I think it's really important to note that the second that we separated our physical health from our mental health was the second everything went downhill. Now, I don't know if that was any time, I don't know if we ever did connect the two, but throughout the rest of this episode, I want you to really consider how silly it is to separate something like that. How silly it is for us to separate the body at all. How is it that we have allowed ourselves to become these fragmented beings where we don't consider how each system influences the next? And to take it even a few steps further, how is it that our physical and our mental health are disconnected? Now, obviously, if you're listening to this episode, you know my philosophy, which includes, focusing on eating whole foods, moving your body, getting adequate, hydration, morning sunlight, adequate sleep, quality sleep, all of these things. So now I'm going to rattle off some of the statistics and kind of explain to you, just, to kind of give you the scoop, give you the data, and then segue into this relevance to mental health. So, in the book, she talks about how over 40% of Americans have inadequate intakes of nutrients like magnesium and vitamins A, C, D, and E. 76% of Americans do not meet recommended fruit intake. 87% do not meet recommended vegetable intake. Chronic diseases account for roughly 90% of US healthcare spending, much of it driven by lifestyle related conditions like metabolic dysfunction, cardiovascular disease, autoimmune conditions, and mental health disorders. Poor sleep has been linked to increased risk of anxiety, depression, insulin resistance, obesity, Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease. Even one night of sleep deprivation can significantly impair glucose regulation, so blood sugar balance, and increase inflammatory markers. Not only that, I'm pretty sure I learned this from the book, one night of sleep can drive up anxiety levels by 40%. I know for me, when I'm not sleeping, I'm definitely more prone and more vulnerable to anxiety. This one's huge. About 95% of serotonin is produced in the gut, which is one reason that gut brain connection is emphasized so heavily in functional medicine conversations around mood and anxiety. Loneliness and social isolation are associated with increased mortality risk comparable to smoking approximately 15 cigarettes per day, according to frequently cited public health research. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, which can impair digestion, disrupt ovulation and progesterone production, worsen insulin resistance, impair sleep, alter microbiome composition, and increase abdominal fat storage. The average American spends over 7 hours per day on screens, contributing circadian disruption, dopamine overstimulation, sedentary behavior, and poor sleep quality. Ultra processed foods now make up nearly 60% of American diet, and higher intake associated with increased depression, anxiety, obesity, inflammatory disease, and metabolic dysfunction. Regular exercise is associated with reductions in depression symptoms comparable in some studies to antidepressant therapy for mild to moderate depression. Magnesium deficiency is extremely common. I think it's like close to 70% of people are deficient in magnesium, and may contribute to anxiety, headaches, constipation, sleep issues, muscle tension, PMS symptoms, and I could go on, but I won't. I will cut myself off there. So, with all of this knowledge, with all of this understanding, like I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more underneath the surface around how the quality of our lifestyle makes an enormous difference on our mental health. Let's also couple that with, if our physical health is deteriorated, right? I'm not just talking physiologically, but what is the mental health toll of having poor physical health? If you're not able to socialize comfortably, if your digestion is causing you trouble and you're always worried to go out, to be with friends, to go here, to travel, to do whatever it is that you want to do to live your life, what kind of impact does that have on your mental health? All of these things that have a direct impact on our mental health, yet our mental health system is not focused enough on it. Yeah, I'm sure that there are lots and lots and lots of therapists and psychiatrists and whomever within our world, within our country, that do consider physical and mental health and the connection of the two. I was lucky enough to work in a private practice for a year and a half where that was the philosophy. And I found this job and I was shocked that I found this job. Honestly, I was shocked to find this practice. And the woman who owns it, she very much aligned in the same belief system as I do, as I've just read these statistics about the influence of our physical health on our mental health. But she and I are the minority. And this was the problem that I came up against when I was working with clients in mental health care is I was working with clients who did not want to take a look at their diet and their lifestyle, which I think is also that is if you're looking at this through a therapeutic lens, that in and of itself is room for work, right? Calling into question, and this is me going back to my clinical days, calling into question why there's resistance there. Why is it uncomfortable for you to call into question your diet and your relationship with movement? What's going on there? What is coming up for you at the thought of it, right? That can be really uncomfortable for people to have to sit with, "Oh, yeah, I probably could be eating better," or "I probably could be moving my body better," or maybe there's trauma around it, right? Maybe they grew up in a household where mom or their role model had a really dysfunctional relationship with food, and so that's triggering for them, right? There's lots of different things that can be there, so that's always where my brain goes when there is resistance to something. It's like, why it's not like, "Oh, there's resistance, we're not gonna talk about this, let's move on." It's obviously within reason, what is happening here that's causing that response, right? Like, what is causing that reaction? But that was one of the big reasons why I chose to resign from mental health is because of the fact that I could not move the needle the way I was hoping for these clients because of the fact that there was a lot of resistance towards what they were eating and how they were moving their body, if they were moving their body. And that's not my job. My job is not to force them into doing something like, oh, you have to go walk, you have to go move your body, get morning sunlight, whatever the case is. My job is to meet them where they are. And that's always going to be my philosophy. And no matter what type of work I do. But I had to plant seeds for them to understand, hey, like I think there's a big influence on what your gut microbiome looks like, what your nutritional habits look like, all of these things that is influencing your symptoms. Let's talk about some of these small steps that we can take to make improvements there. And that was not something I was able to do as comprehensively as I had hoped, and not because I wasn't given the opportunity to do that, but because my clients were just not there. And that's okay, right? I want to be very clear. I'm not saying like they weren't doing what I wanted them to do, so I needed to go. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Because at the end of the day, that is what we learn as therapists. Like, you meet your client where they are, and you present something and you talk about something. But if you can see from that presentation that they're not in a position to receive it, or they don't understand the connection, you can educate. But if they're not ready to take that step, or they're not in that position to make that change, that's not up for you to decide. That's not, and if you're listening to this and you have a therapist that is doing that, please know that that's not right. That's not ethical, because that's not their job. So, I, among several other reasons, decided to leave the mental health field. But that is the problem. Is we are not connecting physical and mental health enough, and because of this, clients are not able to see that connection. If it was more commonplace for us to talk about how our physical health impacts our mental health, then it would be more widely accepted. And that would be something that clients would maybe be more willing to work on because they would see the connection more obviously. Whereas in today's day and age, yes, I understand that the research around gut health and mental health, that's still in largely emergent research, right? Like, yeah, maybe you could argue it's been researched for years. I think there's thousands of studies that are being released on a monthly basis around the gut and the connection between our gut and our brain. And so thank goodness for that. I do feel that as we move on and on and on in our healthcare, and as new developments come into play, and as functional health becomes more of a mainstay in our system, I think there is going to be a lot more talk around the gut brain connection and even just our gut health and our physical health and all of that. But I think one of the biggest setbacks when it comes to mental health care is the fact that we're not comfortably and openly talking about that connection. We're not given education around this. I was really lucky. I forgot to mention this. I was invited to the College of New Jersey, which is where I got my master's, to create basically a program for incoming clinicians to teach them about some of this. Now, I wasn't teaching them necessarily to totally educate their clients. Yes, there's obviously some of that, but it was more so to teach them how to take better care of themselves as they move through the program and as they become clinicians, like how to take care of themselves in a physical health way to influence their mental health and to practice self-care. That is a ethical duty of a therapist. It says it in our code of ethics, like you have to practice self-care. But I was invited by TCNJ to create this program. And so I'm hopeful that some of this information spills over into their clinical practice because of the fact that this is not something that the program offers. And I was very overt in sharing that with the woman who hired me. She was an advisor of mine and a professor of mine while I was a student. And I said, this is what is missing in this program. Like, we need more information about nutrition for mental health and the mind body connection and all of that in this work, because it's pivotal. It's underlying. It's so incredibly important. And it's such a huge deficit. And honestly, this is what would set TCNJ apart from other programs. Being able to educate on that and share that that's a part of the program, I think that would be very appetizing to a lot of prospective students. So, I also want to shed light on this idea of how truly effective how truly effective traditional methods of mental health care are, because I think that's important to consider. And then I want to get into some of the maybe more controversial parts of this conversation. So another book that I really like is This Is Your Brain on Food by Dr. Uma Naidu. She is also someone I am manifesting to come on the podcast. So, Uma, if you're listening, give me a call. But she says roughly 50% of patients do not achieve adequate response to a first antidepressant, and remission rates are substantially lower than response rates. And then she also says, until we solve nutritional problems, no amount of medication and psychotherapy is going to be able to stem the tide of mental health issues in our society. So basically, what she's saying is she is trying to be very clear on psychiatric meds and traditional psychotherapy. They have their efficacy in their own ways, but are they 100% effective? No. Can we argue that any approach to any health concern is 100% effective? No. But should we not be considering the lifestyle and nutritional factors in tandem with psychiatric intervention? Yes. Should we not be considering psychiatric intervention, psychotherapy, and nutrition and lifestyle? Yes. I think always too, I think it's very well known that psychiatric intervention is going to be more effective with psychotherapy. I don't have a statistic to back that, but from what I understand, that makes a lot of sense. And I would argue that makes that that makes clear sense around the fact that if you are medicated and you have a psychiatric prescription and you were also actively seeking out psychotherapy, finding a modality of therapy that is best for you and what you're navigating, that is going to be 100% more effective, right? 100% is me just being dramatic, right? I'm not saying 100% as like a research, like a formal statistic. It's more just you are going to have more efficacy by seeing a therapist on a regular basis to walk through and navigate through some of the cognitive work and the behavioral work, coupling that with psychiatric support. You have a very synergistic situation there. Now, let's take that same lens then and translate it into nutritional health, lifestyle health, metabolic health, gut brain health, even working on trauma. I mean, I believe that trauma work is deeply holistic. I think that is one of the best parts about mental health care, modern mental health care, is we do have strong trauma informed therapists. But I think we could argue, and this is actually something that the program pivoted with in TCNJ after I'd graduated in their new program, is a course specifically on trauma, because trauma, every single person has trauma. And whether or not somebody has a big T, like serious trauma, sexual abuse, neglect, physical abuse, whatever the case might be, or little t trauma, which is maybe divorced parents or growing up with an alcoholic parent or getting in a major car crash as a child, right? Like these and I obviously little t big T, that's not meant to discredit the impact that trauma can have on the body and on how you feel and your outlook on life and health outcomes and all that. But there's just varying degrees of trauma. And we all have trauma. Like that is something that I think we think trauma and we think, oh, trauma is reserved for, somebody who has these major big T traumas. But we all lived through the trauma of COVID-19, right? We've lived through the trauma of 9/11, some of us. We've lived through different traumas in our own lives that are very individual to us, and our bodies don't forget that. Our bodies do not forget that. So our body carries these traumas with us. And I could spend a whole episode, which I might have to retract that statement because I think I have spent a whole episode talking about this. I'll have to go back and look in the archives and see, but talking about how the body stores trauma and how so many poor health outcomes have some tie to trauma. Not only physical health outcomes, but mental health outcomes, both of which have a connection to past stressors, childhood trauma, adverse childhood experiences. I've talked about this time and again. The concept of ACEs, so fascinating. Highly recommend that you look into this. ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experience. Dr. Nadine Harris Burke. I forget her full name. I'm pretty sure it's Nadine Harris Burke or Nadine Burke Harris. She has a book called The Deepest Well, and this is all about her kind of development of understanding about adverse childhood experience and the impact that that has on long-term health outcomes and the ACE questionnaire and that connection with health. I mean, it is just mind-blowing. And talk about a holistic way of looking at the body and looking at health by understanding your experience as a 6-year-old child, as a 10-year-old child, and now you're 45 years old and you've just developed an autoimmune disease, or you're in your 20s and you develop an autoimmune disease, or whatever the case is, and the connection there. Dr. Gabor Mate is also an incredible resource for this. So understanding how psychiatric care, psychotherapeutic care, both of which valuable, life-changing, life-saving tools. And I would even say psychotherapy is definitely a very holistic way of working, right? Psychiatric care is meant, obviously, especially for those who are a little bit maybe um, require a little bit more targeted interventions, maybe for more complex mental health concerns, right? For the sake of this episode, I'm really more dancing with this concept of depression, anxiety. I don't want to necessarily allude to this being a relevant conversation for things like personality disorder, schizophrenia, things of that capacity. But I firmly believe that if we were to then bring in this additional component of nutrition and lifestyle to complement psychiatric intervention, to complement psychotherapeutic intervention, we would have tremendously more successful health outcomes when it comes to mental health. I actually presented on this. This has been, let me just say, and I probably should have said this in the beginning of the episode, this has been my primary mission since I left grad school. And at the end of grad school, we have, I forget what it's called, but we have like a case presentation or like we have to center on a certain topic in the mental health field. I forget what it was called. I'll have to go look and see. I forget because it had like a formal name. But basically what I did was I educated my classmates in my cohort on this topic about nutrient deficiencies, lifestyle. Dr. Leslie Korn, she is also someone I referenced a ton in that presentation. She is, I believe, I want to say she's a nutritional psychiatrist. Dr. Drew Ramsey is a great resource. There's so many leaders. Dr. Robin Berzin, she talks a ton about this in her book. So many leaders who are either psychiatrists, or they're just leaders in the mental health. I guess most of them are psychiatrists. They talk about how they use nutrition in in practice as a way to complement their psychiatry, in a way to complement their use of medication. And this is no different than like a functional medicine doctor who is able to prescribe, but also is very functional, is looking at like what's going on in the body and how can we make changes nutritionally and so forth to enhance and improve one's quality of life. But this is what I wanted to educate my classmates on, is the connection between what we're doing with lifestyle and nutrition and how that influences our mental health. And so I want to present this argument around the fact that yes, psychotherapy, psychiatric support, psychiatric intervention, all exceptionally useful and valuable on a case by case basis. But when we're taking the nutrition and lifestyle piece and using that to enhance traditional mental health care, we are doing so much for not only the mind, but also the body. And that I think is so relevant because it's about considering how is my physical being and the state of my health in my physical being influencing what's going on in my brain. And like I said at the beginning, there is an undeniable connection between the two, an undeniable connection between what's happening metabolically. 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, and you're trying to tell me that that does not have some correlation to how my brain is operating? Dr. Chris Palmer, he wrote the book Brain Energy. Look at me, I'm just spitting out these people. Brain Energy, he wrote the book all about metabolic health and how that influences our mental health. Go read that book. Go look up his work. It's insane how much of a connection there is between what is going on in the body and how that's influencing our mental health. And if we are seeing statistics soar for physical health issues, rates that have never been seen before, and then we're trying to pinpoint why is everyone so anxious and depressed? Well, how are we not seeing this connection? Why are we not talking about this? And luckily, in the functional health space, we talk about this one and the same, right? Anxiety and depression are just symptoms that are also then lumped into if somebody has indigestion or somebody has acid reflux or somebody has, fatigue, right? It's not like, oh, well, we're separating them because that's a mental health issue. So that's not relevant to the picture. No, absolutely. If I'm looking at labs and someone's dealing with anxiety and depression, I sure as heck want to see what's going on in their gut. I want to know exactly what's going on in their gut. I want to know what's going on metabolically. Show me what their fasting glucose looks like. Show me what their fasting insulin looks like. Show me what's going on systemically so I can understand what is going on with their mental health concerns. So, the reason that I call this topic controversial, and I I want to be very clear on this. I want to be sure that I'm not, like I said, I don't want to invalidate anyone's experience. What I really want to do is shed light on the connection between your physical and your mental health. And that requires me to say some tough things, right? Which means the way that you are taking care of your body is going to have a direct influence on your mental health. And I think what's really frustrating is we have let mental health become this really fragile topic, understandably so, right? People go through really hard things and it really dramatically impacts their mental health, or they've had a really hard time, they've struggled a ton, and that obviously is something you want to be empathetic towards, sympathetic towards, and understanding towards. And I feel I can speak eloquently on this topic enough to be very clear on what I mean, but also be sensitive to the fact that this is the reality of so many, right? So I don't want to diminish anyone's experience, but I am here to shed light on important topics, and so that's what we're going to do. We have to start taking responsibility for our health because we are responsible. We are so responsible. I shared this weekend a reel about how eating well is a form of self-respect and how you need to show yourself love and show yourself respect for your body and just for who you are. And that means eating wholesomely. Doesn't have to be this perfect, stellar, perfectly organic and whole foods, everything way of life. But we no longer can continue to eat poorly and expect our health outcomes to reflect differently. We can't be eating unwell. It is 2026. Like, it is time that we take responsibility and take initiative in our health. Stop expecting others to do that. Stop expecting better health when we are not investing in the tools and the steps that we need to have better health. And that is the same for mental health. As I said, I want to be respectful to the realities of mental health, but at the same time, we have allowed ourselves to accept our outcomes for mental health when there is so much we can be doing on a physical health basis to create better mental health, whether that be through our gut, through our metabolic health, through movement. The list goes on in order to feel better, in order to feel better in a mental health capacity. And that, my friends, is the reality. That is the cold, hard truth. That is the tough love I'm giving you. You need to take responsibility for your mental health just as you would your physical health because they are one and the same. Now, this is me coming at you clinically. If that triggers you, or if that feels uncomfortable, or you feel resistant to that, or something's coming up for you, sit with that because that is telling you something. Okay? That is telling you something. That is telling you something that is significant, that is important. This is something that we do not do. When we feel triggered, when we feel that there's something that's reacting to something that someone says, we become defensive about it. We become, we become, resistant to it or reluctant to it, or we become angry or frustrated about it. We can be okay with the fact that we're feeling that way, right? We can be okay with the fact that that's a real experience, and we can look at it a little bit closely, right? Like we can look at that and say, okay, well, what the heck? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I having such a visceral reaction to the things that she's saying? Right? And usually that tells you more of what's going on there, right? That tells you more of, well, yeah, I'm not taking care of myself the way that I should, or I'm not able to recognize the connection between my physical health, or I'm not willing to recognize the connection between my physical health and my mental health because that just feels too overwhelming, or I have a bad experience with that, right? So I want you to really pay attention to what's happening in the body as a response to what I'm saying. Not because I don't want you to like me anymore, but because I want you to kind of call into question, how is this all relevant to my ability to now move forward? So this episode, which is obviously no surprise to you if you're a regular Let's Eat listener, kind of went all over the place. And I really just wanted to emphasize emphasize the need for us to take our physical health seriously in relation to our mental health. And like I said, it can be really hard for us to take responsibility for our health. It can be really hard. We have been led to believe that it's not up to us. We have been led to believe that it's just something that happens to us and that we have to just accept our realities. But even if you have complex mental health concerns, there is a lot you can be doing from a nutrition and lifestyle standpoint that's going to help you feel better. Because if you feel better in body, you will feel better in mind. That's the way it goes. And so by making movement a regular part of your routine, by focusing on keeping your blood sugar stabilized and focusing on getting lots of color, lots of nutrients, the incredible power. Nutrition for mental health is one of the most fascinating areas of research. I just find it and obviously maybe I'm the only one, but I'm telling you, this is something that is just like I she was too stunned to speak. Honestly, I'm so passionate about this topic, about the connection between getting enough omega-3s to help nourish the brain, getting enough antioxidants to help reduce neuroinflammation, to fuel gut bacteria, to reinforce the gut lining. I mean, it is wild. It is so incredibly wild how much we can do through nutrition to help support the mind and the body. How magnesium deficiency, anxiety, B12 deficiency, depression. And yet we're running to the doctor. We're saying, I feel depressed. I have low mood. I'm anxious, right? I'm irritable. Okay, here's an antidepressant. And all you needed all along was some anxiety, was some magnesium and some B12, right? And this is obviously more of a joke to prove a point than it is anything, right? I'm not trying to say, okay, yeah, you're depressed and so you need B12 and you'll be fixed, right? That's not what I'm suggesting. But more just shedding light on the fact that this is not something that we talk about enough. And so why are we not talking about it? We're not talking about it because it's not something that's commonplace. It's not something that's talked about. It's not mainstream. And that's a problem because people are walking around with these symptoms. What I'm seeing in labs, dysbiosis, overgrowth of bad bacteria in the gut, low progesterone, so important for anxiety. low progesterone and poor sleep, low progesterone and anxiety. If you have low progesterone and you're not sleeping well, what do we think is going to happen to your anxiety levels? What did I say before? Pop quiz. What did I say before? Your anxiety levels can increase by 40% with one poor night of sleep. Now, what happens with our metabolic health when we get poor sleep? Well, our glucose sensitivity is impaired, or insulin sensitivity is impaired. So you become more insulin resistant when you don't get enough sleep. And what does that mean? That means the body's not going to be able to use energy properly or I'm sorry, yes, well, that makes sense. The body's not going to be able to use glucose properly to create energy. So what is that going to do to our body's ability to function well if we can't create energy in order to do that? So how is that going to impact our mental health? Do you see what I'm saying here? There is just, I mean, you could go down this maze of Tally has joined. Tally has joined the chat. You can go down this maze and just find all of these connections, and it is the most incredible, it's the most incredible field. I just find it so fascinating. That is my only regret. That's my only regret when it comes to my professional career path and my professional path is had I stayed in the field, or I mean, let's go all the way back to like my bachelor's degree or when I started college. Like, should I have gone and gotten my MD and become a nutritional psychiatrist? I don't know if I would want to be able to prescribe, but that's my only regret is not staying in the field long enough to become a licensed therapist fully so that I could go out on my own and do this work, like without restraint. Now, obviously, as a practitioner, I have limitations, still largely work with clients on their mental health, largely work with clients on their symptoms of mental health because of the connection between, hormonal imbalances and, uh, you know, imbalances in our hunger hormones, imbalances in our sex hormones, cortisol issues, HPA axis dysfunction, nervous system dysregulation, the gut brain axis, metabolic health, all of these things that play into our physical health. I'm sorry. Yeah, our physical health and our mental health. But at the end of the day, I'm still able to do that work because of how when I'm working with someone on their physical health, which is largely my job, that is then inevitably going to impact their mental health. That's inevitably going to impact their mental health. So even if I'm not clinically able to support clients in a way that is more therapeutic in nature, which is fine, I am understanding of that ethical boundary, I will inevitably be working with clients in that capacity just by nature of the fact that the work that I do centers on physical health. And what do we know? Our physical health is our mental health. Take a breath. Does anyone remember in past episodes? You might not remember, but maybe you, what you do. If I would talk and like not breathe, I would like start to get short of breath and be like, I have to take a deep breath, but I couldn't take a deep breath because I was just like rambling. That isn't happening to me right now, but I was expecting it to happen because I just went on a little bit of a rant. Anyways, I'm gonna leave you with this quote from the book Prescription for Happiness. It's like one of my favorite quotes, and it's actually really fascinating and timely because I recorded this quote as a voiceover to a reel I made 3 years ago, and TikTok just reminded me that this was the day 3 years ago that I shared it. So it's just ironic because I'm about to read this quote, and what are the chances that this was actually something I did a couple years ago? So, what has changed, however, is not what's happening around us, but what's happening inside us. Compared to several decades ago, we now consume more sugar, an average of 60 pounds per year, are far less active, sitting up to 10 hours per day, with only 23% of us getting enough exercise for general health, stare at screens for 12 hours, take an average of 4 prescription drugs, and are exposed to hundreds of toxic chemicals in our diet and environment every day. None of these factors existed to this degree even 30 years ago, and these fundamental changes are the real reason so many of us feel sad, sick, and tired, despite our best efforts not to be sad, sick, and tired. In other words, the root of our emotional health issues is our physical health, or lack thereof. That quote is everything. I'm obsessed with that quote. So, thank you for being here. I could go on and on and on about this topic, and I think given the length of this episode and how I still have so much I want to say about it, I think it deserves you know, it's an additional episode in order to really kind of expand on this to the degree that it's owed, because it's so important. I would love feedback from you and thoughts from you, and I can clarify anything for you or dive deeper into anything for you. I just really feel so strongly about this, and I hope that this episode brought you value. And as we move through Mental Health Awareness Month, I hope that you are paying closer attention to your physical health for the sake of your mental health. So, thank you so much for being here. Until next time, be well.